Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thoughtfully Made Fiber Podcast. My name is Amy Scher and I am a knitting pattern designer, a sewist, sometimes spinner and weaver. And this winter I've been getting into all the fiber arts, and I thought it would be really fun to come on here and tell you all about the gifts that I think would be perfect for the fiber artist in your life. So to start the series, I wanted to dive right into books that I think will be great gifts for the fiber artist in your life. Most of the books on my list here are suitable for multiple fiber arts. So whether the person that you are shopping for is a knitter, a spinner, a sewist, a weaver, whatever, there's probably something here for them. So without further ado, let's jump into my 2024 gift guide for the fiber artist in your life, the book edition. So the very first book on my list is the Fleece and Fiber Source book, which is one of my favorite books. It covers breed characteristics and fiber preparation and uses for over 200 breeds of animals, from sheep to goats to alpacas to llamas to vicuñas, camels, bison, musk oxen, yaks, and more. Each breed has several pages in the spread, not only covering the fiber characteristics, but showing different ways to prepare it. They work up hand spun samples and knit up swatches, which I find very helpful. They even have little woven swatches, which is helpful. So this book would be very suitable for all kinds of fiber artists, from knitters to spinners to weavers. I think all of us could really do with a reference book like this. I love exploring fibers and going through these pages of beautiful swatches and photos of the fibers. It really helps me understand what I'm shopping for. Even when I'm shopping for yarn for my own shop, since I own a yarn shop, I'm always thinking about the different breed characteristics and the prep, whether it is woolen spun, whether it is worsted spun, whether it is mill dyed, whether it is hand dyed, whether in the mill it was blended as a fleece with different colors first, or it was dyed as a cone once the yarn is spun. There's just all these different kinds of ways to get different effects out of yarn, and this book is a really great way that covers so many of these different things that we as knitters, spinners, weavers consider. So this is a great reference book for anyone in your life who does any of those crafts. If they don't already have it, they're gonna be so glad that they do. If you don't already have it and you do one of these crafts, I highly recommend this one. So my next recommendation is one for any kind of garment maker. So if you know somebody who is a knitter or a sewist or a weaver who sews clothing out of their woven fabrics, this is a great book for that. This is the Palmer-Plesch Complete Guide to Fitting. And it is based on fitting with pattern pieces using pattern tissue, which is typical in our sewing kind of situation. It is working off of tissue pieces like this that you'll see in various sewing patterns. However, I use this to troubleshoot fit issues all the time in my knitting design as well. I do think about my knitting designs in pieces the way I do in my sewing, because I learn to sew first before I learn to knit. So this is a really great resource for sewists and weavers who sew clothing. However, if you know a knitting designer in your life or somebody who likes to fiddle around with sweater fit, that this is also a really important resource. This one is a little bit more advanced and includes a lot more advanced concepts for the knitter. But if you know somebody who's really gotten into fit modifications and they would like this additional resource, this is kind of like the go-to Bible in the sewing fitting world. And if you know a sewist who doesn't already have it, they need this book, period. Next on my list is a book for knitters specifically, because knitters, we tend to approach patterns more on a stitch and row level and not as like a pieces level. I think a lot of us have trouble wrapping our minds around how to do mods based on pattern piece adjustments like in that book. Now, I do a lot of that work for you in my patterns, but if you are a knitter and you're working from any given pattern and you'd like to learn about how different constructions work, how to select desired ease, and just really anything to do with fit and anything to do with modifying in different constructions, this is the book for you. This is Amy Herzog's Ultimate Sweater book. I reference it all the time. It covers all the major constructions: set-in, drop shoulder, raglan, and circular yokes. It explains the basic idea, kind of like a beginner's intro idea to every construction, and it also explains how you come up with the stitch counts from each construction. So for each desired construction, it explains how it's graded and how to do the grading math. And I find that this is a great intro to grading for anybody who wants to grade their own patterns, or they're really creative and they have kind of like a vision in their head of what they want in a sweater and they just don't know where to start with doing the math. So this is a great intro and reference book, honestly, for all knitters who like to mess around with the fits. While the Palmer-Plesch book is interchangeable and the concepts are fluid and usable for all different garment making artists, if you know a knitter specifically and you want to get them a knitting specific book, the Ultimate Sweater book may be a better fit for them. So one thing I found out as a baby spinner and now as a baby weaver is that the fiber community is so vibrant and so passionate, and there's like 100,000 resources that you can give to your loved one who is starting out in any of these crafts. So in weaving and in spinning, I have identified some magazines that I think are super great. One of the greatest investments I've ever made in either craft is subscribing to these magazines, reading the different articles. I highly recommend Ply Magazine, which is the first of these that I have subscribed to. For quite a while, I had a physical subscription, but I found that I actually like to leaf through all of the back issues at once while I'm like bed rotting, hanging out in my bed on my iPad. So I switched to a digital all access subscription, which just means that I can access like everything they've ever written, which is super helpful because a lot of the print editions are now out of stock. So each issue comes with a different theme, and some of my favorite issues have been basics, worsted, woolen, and sock. Those covered almost all the spinning that I love to do the most. So each issue that's published deep dives into the subject of that issue and is just super helpful for people starting out to get like a great overview of each thing. While there are some really great books that cover these topics, such as yarn texture, I really love having a subscription just because it helps me redigest that information in different ways throughout the year, and I have lots of chances to kind of explore just one limited topic, and that really helps my learning style. So a subscription to Ply Magazine is quite affordable, and it'll be the gift that keeps on giving if you buy one for your loved one. So I highly recommend a subscription to that. I also have a digital subscription to Handwoven magazine, which is kind of what I consider to be the weaving equivalent of this particular type of magazine. It is wonderful. It is published by Long Thread Media. They have a backlog of like 40-50 years of drafts and patterns that you can choose from and work from, and it's just an invaluable resource. At this point, there's probably not a weaving topic they haven't covered. So if you know somebody who's just getting into weaving, a Handwoven magazine subscription would also be an excellent choice. And because I am a new weaver, weaving subscriptions are kind of the foremost, most important thing on my mind right now. The other thing I really enjoy is Jane Stafford's subscription for her Learn to Weave classes. I think that's also a really great gift for somebody who's just starting out on weaving. The light is changing rapidly around my house right now, so I moved up here to avoid like a bad dark winter lighting situation in my basement, but it's like becoming overcast in some spots and it's doing this weird flecky thing, so I apologize if the lighting is getting weird for a little bit. So next on my list is a book I purchased recently, and it is Pom-Pom's Minipom, Happy Knits for Little Kids. Now Pom-Pom is no longer making print things, which makes me very sad. But if you can find a copy of Minipom, I highly recommend it. This book has some of their most popular patterns ever, but written in mini form, such as this adorable little raglan sweater. Oh, so dang cute. And I just adore all these patterns. So in the past, I have designed for Pom-Pom, and working with them was such a joyful experience. And I enjoy quite a lot of their patterns myself, like just as a consumer, a customer. And honestly, this is like the best of the best because it has some of their best patterns in miniature form. So it's a great introduction to all of these patterns, and then you can extrapolate out and purchase the patterns for the adults individually if you end up liking this one. This book also comes with a digital edition so that you can load it wherever you go, so you can knit from a digital version or printout if you prefer, and keep your book pristine, which I think is so thoughtful. I believe most of Pom-Pom's books have this feature, so I highly recommend any of their books, but right now the one I most enjoy flipping through is Minipom. I have 2 little kids, so I love sewing for them and knitting for them. So if you know somebody who loves to make clothes for their kids and they knit, this is a great option. And finally, I have a big book for knitters. If you don't have this book already and you haven't heard me talk about it, you need this book. I've talked about this book so many times and so often here, and I reference it all the time as a designer and as a knitter. So without further ado, here's the final book on my list. Here is the Vogue Knitting Bible. I actually think it's called the Ultimate Knitting Book, but we just call it the Knitting Bible because it feels like that's what it is. So the Vogue Ultimate Knitting Book is a huge reference book full of different techniques, basic shaping, different motifs, how to knit colorwork, how to knit cable. It covers so many techniques that I have yet to run into a technique where I couldn't find a starting point in this book. Now, it has summaries and beautiful illustrations of each technique that it covers. It may not cover the most in-depth techniques, like for example, it talks briefly about how to shape a neckline for a sweater, but of course that can get complex quickly, and I have had to pursue other references for garment shaping and designing and the like for my purposes. So I'm sure that there's other techniques in here where it doesn't give you everything you need to know ever, but it gives you a really strong starting point and will get you through most patterns that use any of these techniques. Some honorable mentions are the Hand Weaving Green Book by Marguerite Davidson. I love that one. It just is for some reason, it's a weaving book that has achieved cult status, and I really enjoy working from it. There's just something so delightful about working from this particular, like basically a weaving stitch pattern book. That's a good one. I also really enjoy books about visible mending. I think they're really pretty to look at. So these are a few other options to consider if you are looking for a gift. These books are excellent last-minute gifts for your favorite knitter. I actually think books are a really lovely category of gifts for the knitters in your life. And this is because we fiber artists, knitters, sewists, weavers, we have such specific requirements and preferences for the tools and the yarns that we like to use, and we often own a lot of it already. So unless a fiber artist tells you specifically what they'd like, I think a book is more of a fail-safe, kind of like a easy choice for a gift that won't disappoint and will fit into any fiber artist's life, particularly reference books. I know I included one pattern book in this list, but just because it's so pleasant to look through and flip through. However, there's quite a number of reference books in this list that I hope that you and the fiber artists in your life will find helpful. If you have any books that you'd like to add to this list, please drop them in the comments. I'm particularly looking for like the basics of hand weaving type books, deep dives into techniques. I know about some of the books for double weaving, how to weave a fine cloth, things like that. I'd love to know more of them personally, just for me. So if you have any book recommendations for any of these fiber crafts, please drop them in the comments. And of course, there are fiber crafts that I do not personally partake in, such as needle felting, crocheting. There's all kinds of great books that are not covered in this video just because I'm not as familiar with those crafts. So if you have any recommendations, please put them in the comments. And if you have any requests for the type of videos that you'd like to see from me, tips, tutorials, those kinds of things, please also give me a comment. I don't do many tutorials, but I do talk about like general concepts and tips. Thank you so much for watching today, and if you'd like to find out more about my life as a knitting designer and all the different fiber arts that I do, please do subscribe. I'm going to put a little doobly-doo here at the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful and warm winter holiday season, and I will talk to you next time.